Welcome back to the Get Loved Up podcast, your number one resource for inspiration and motivation to live your purpose, make healthy living a priority, and thrive doing what you love. I'm your host, Koya Webb, a small town girl who chased her dreams and caught them, a former track and field athlete who healed using spirituality and yoga, and an entrepreneur who didn't let sexual assault, racism, and insecurities dim her light. And now it's your turn to allow these episodes with some of the top voices in spirituality, wellness, and entrepreneurship to inspire you to thrive. Let's get loved up together. Sensei Koshin Paley Ellison, MFA, LMSW, DMIN, is an author, Zen teacher, Jungian psychotherapist, and certified chaplaincy educator. After many years as a chaplain and psychotherapist, Koshin co-founded the New York Zen Center for Contemplative Care, which offers contemplative approaches to care through education, personal caregiving, and Zen practice. Today, New York Zen Center's methodologies are internationally recognized and have touched the lives of tens of thousands of individuals. Koshin is a world-renowned thought leader in contemplative care. He is the author of Wholehearted, Slow Down, Help Out, Wake Up, Wisdom Publications 2019, and the co-editor Awake at the Bedside, Contemplative Teachings on Palliative and the End of Life Care, Wisdom Publications 2016. His work has been featured in the New York Times, PBS, CBS, Sunday Morning, Tricycle, among other publications. Koshin!
What's up, Koya?
Oh my goodness. First of all, I need to know what all of those letters mean. You have done so much work in your time. And honestly, I have to be honest with the community. I didn't even meet you through your work. I met you through your presence. And your presence alone has stuck with me since the day I met you. Your spirit, the way you hold space, has been a gift and a blessing to my life. So thank you for that. And can you tell us a little bit about those letters and what they mean, all bunched up there together around your name?
It's a lot of letters.
It's a lot of letters. You've done a lot of work in your lifetime.
Basically, the letters mean I love learning. And they actually tell you a little bit about my journey, because the first one, which is MFA, which is a Master's in Fine Arts, and only reason I got that is because I read this book of poems when I was in Spain, and I met this woman named Marie Howe, who's this incredible poet, and her book, What the Living Do. And I said, whatever, I'm going to go and study with this woman, whoever this person is. I didn't even ever met her, but I was so moved by this book. And so I found out she was teaching in this master's program in poetry. And I said, okay, I'll do that.
Wow.
And so I got an MFA in poetry at Sarah Lawrence, because I mostly just loved this woman and have grown over the years to even love her more. And the other letters, LMSW is a licensed master social worker. And I did that degree because I was working as a chaplain, which is someone who provides that extra layer of spiritual and emotional support at the bedside. And I was working in a hospital on an oncology floor. And many of the folks who were there said, I want to work with you after I leave. And I said, I don't know if I can do that. And so I found out if you had an MSW, you could do that.
Wow.
I said, I'll sign up for that.
Wow. Okay. Well, I have questions about both of those letters and groups of letters until we get to the next one. So as a social worker, you're able to continue your work with these people that you started with. And that is so special, because it's really hard when someone gets attached to someone as their caretaker and you build that trust and that relationship and that bond.
Exactly.
To then transition. So have you noticed, and I know that's pretty much where your Zen Center is all about. So did you do that as a way to keep up with people before you created your Zen Center?
I did. And I just felt so moved. So I became a therapist through, not because I wanted to, but I felt asked to, and I feel like in many ways it's such a privilege when we're in this life, when we're invited to do something. And so I felt like all of these incredible people who are struggling with illness and the meaning of life, and just they were entrusting me with their care. And so I wanted to do everything I could to get tooled up so that I could love them up.
I love that.
Yeah. And so that's how I began social work school, finished social work school, and then went on to keep studying. And that's the Jungian psychotherapist. I did 6 years of training in Jungian psychoanalysis, and mostly because I just wanted to learn more so that I could have wider access to more of this world, so that I could be more connected. Yeah.
I love that. I love that you got more education so that you could feel more connected. I love, love, love that. And I had a question about the poem. What is your favorite poem? Having the education, I know you've read a lot of poems in your lifetime. What's one of your favorites?
Well, one of my favorites is, it's this part of this poem where Marie is having this conversation with her brother, and as he was dying, and after he died, she wrote this poem that she said that she was stepping into a new life, and it was the gate of this new life was the shape her brother's body made, and that she had to pass through that shape. And that still makes me tremble, just that, to really think about the people who have gone on, who have died, and how that we walk through that gate of their dying, and how important that is, and how that is also how we include them in their legacy, and how and we're part of their legacy when we walk through that gate. And for me, my grandmother my dad's mom was one of my delicious people in my life, and who I felt really seen and experienced by and learned with. And, it was her idea actually to found the Zen Center. And she said, I never thought I'd say this, but, there's something to the Zen, and something about listening. And you and Chodo, who's my husband, she said, the two of you should start some kind of nonprofit organization and train people in Zen and how to care. So part of the gate that we've walked through is my grandmother's legacy, and continue to this day. And she's really the founder of this place, this little daughter of immigrants.
Wow. I love that. I love that story. I want you to tell me about the Zen Center and what it is and what it does for the world. And then I want to go a little bit into your childhood, but I want people to know before we go there, because it's really deep and I know we're going to spend some time there. I want you to share just how, it's almost like we're going to trek backwards, but I want you to share the Zen Center.
Yeah, so the Zen Center we're physically located in Chelsea, in a neighborhood. I'm in the little island of Manhattan, and we're an educational nonprofit organization that does three things. We train people in Zen practice, which is really about how to pay attention, develop stillness, and widen out your circles of compassion. And the second thing that we do is we do a lot of direct care work. And so we care for about 10,000 people a year. And we do that through our students and our community-based programs. And now through the new world that we're in, we have bereavement groups and spiritual support for people. We have sometimes groups with someone from Africa, someone from Europe, someone from Asia, all mourning and grieving together. And so we do a lot of that work. And the third part is education. So we've partnered with a seminary. So we offer a master's program, as well as a year-long fellowship in contemplative medicine for physicians and nurse practitioners who people want to really do a deep dive into integration of their intrapersonal, like inside of themselves. How is their home life? And how is their clinical work? Seeing all of it as just one life. And we have also another program that is called Foundations in Contemplative Care. And that's for folks, everybody, to come in. And so we have moms and bus drivers and acrobats and everybody kind of coming together to learn together and to support one another. And how do we learn how to be awake at the bedside? And so we like to have a lot of fun.
Fun is so important because it's not fun to go through transition, and it's a very, very nuanced and challenging time for a lot of people. So, but I do think that your childhood, and when I read your book, learning about your childhood, it helped me see how you've basically grown into your service by what you went through. And I always say you grow through what you go through. It's such a cliche term, but I love it. So can you share a little bit about your childhood and how you grew up and how that affected what you now do today?
Yeah. So I would say, just one of the folks who work here at the center asked me, like, what, you're always saying everything's so amazing and so extraordinary. And where did you get to that? I said, because I know suffering really well. Mm. I know what it means to feel at the brink.
Right.
And so I grew up in upstate New York, and I was the child of parents who, they were baby boomers, and their parents before them were immigrants and some children of immigrants and people who had escaped Eastern Europe. And they were all kind of the crazy ones because everyone who left, either my grandparents or great grandparents, felt the danger as Jewish people. And they were the only ones on both sides of my family who left, and everyone else were rounded up and killed by their neighbors, actually, mostly. And like one set of my family were put into a barn and set on fire by their neighbors. And so, as is common in groups of people, and where immense suffering and where people are forced to leave or are forcibly removed from their country or their place, there's a lot of epigenetic trauma and unprocessed, like nobody knew how to talk about it. How do you even wrap your mind around that?
Right.
And so it's common with a lot of families like mine is that a lot of stuff goes underground and it comes out in really difficult ways. And so while, my parents and they divorced when I was young, meant really well. And if you met them, they're beautiful people, actually, but they could say allowed a lot of harm to happen. So there was a huge gap between their values and what was happening.
Mm.
And what was happening, that there was sexual abuse and physical abuse and verbal abuse happening in the house. And, outside the house, it looked pretty good.
Mm.
Inside the house, it felt like a nightmare. And it was actually.
Right.
Really scary. And then there were many times where I didn't know if I would survive the night. And so the danger was so escalated. And so I felt deeply alone and deeply scared. And for some reason, I have two siblings, and I think and I was the youngest, that somehow I understood that everyone was in trouble.
Mm.
I remember having that thought when I was 6, that they were all pretty cuckoo.
Mm.
And I think actually that in many ways created a path for me that was incredibly important. I could imagine something else. I didn't feel completely cut off. There was a little road that I can imagine, and really fought in my own mind to keep that road just a little bit open. It was like in those movies where, they're running and the door's closing and they have to run, and they have to slide under it or whatever that is. That's actually the image that I had that I had to somehow keep going so that I could get out. And because I felt like it was almost like a tomb. Where there was not a lot of life-giving. And so inside the house, it was like that. And I was a young gay kid, and not so fun in school as a young gay kid. And as it still is not for many, many GLBTQ kids. And so I was scared inside the house and scared outside the house, so I would go to the bus stop, and literally the school bully was at my bus stop, me and him. And so, so it was like that. It was rough.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. I know that's deep, and that was a very painful part of your life. So what helped you? Because like you said, a lot of people who identify are in that space right now. So what helped you see your way out?
There was these, I'm older, so there was these movies that first came out, this movie called Star Wars. The first one, and I remember seeing that movie, and that, Luke Skywalker was this character who was really whiny and kind of annoying, and oh man, and he was in this family, but he wasn't of that family. That wasn't his parents. And somehow that felt really compelling to me. And I was wow, maybe some kind of scramble happened. And then he goes out and meets this teacher, and this guy, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and that we all kind of know about a bit in pop culture. Right. And just the thought, wow, you can meet someone who's not in school, but someone in the world could become your teacher. And I remember thinking, wow, I would need to find my teacher.
Right.
I need a teacher. It was this huge moment for me. in this kind of, in some ways, silly film, but it just became hugely important. And then soon after that, this other movie came out, the first one, The Karate Kid. And it was like the same theme, like this kid who was kind of a little bit lost, and he found this teacher. And I was like, okay. And that movie was even more helpful because it's like, oh, he learned karate.
Yeah, I love that. It's one of my favorite movies.
And I thought, all right, I can learn karate. And maybe that's where I'll find my teacher. And so at the local strip mall by where I was, in the basement, back around behind the drugstore, in this dingy place was this karate dojo. And as like an 11-year-old, I started going there. And it was not like one of those karate schools with like kids programs, So it was a bit odd, but I kept going. And I remember the first time I went, they would have this like fake wood floor there, and we would sit on the wood floor with like sitting on our knees, in your butt and your feet. And it's really painful, I have to say, and so we would be sitting there like that. And he was teaching us actually Zen meditation, which I didn't know at the time. And he would just walk around us as we were sitting, and would be sweating. And he said, until you learn how to be still with your pain, you will never be free.
Whew.
And I still think of him to this day. And then after he would say that, then he would sit and just focus and be in himself. And I remember thinking, I'm learning a superpower that's going to help me get through that door.
Mm-hmm.
I'm learning what I actually need to learn. And I said, and actually I learned too that the people in the house and the people, that guy Ron at the bus stop, like none of them knew how to be still with their pain. Mm-hmm. Everyone was acting their pain out because they were all in pain.
Right.
And they were all suffering.
Mm-hmm.
And that gap between their values, these beautiful people were doing and or allowing terrible things to happen. It was because, and I learned like this amazing teaching that has been amazing in my life, to learn how to be still in our pain, to not have to run away, to not have to flee, to do something new.
So meditation was that thing that you found by finding this master, if you are a teacher, that helped you learn how to hold space, or
Sensei White.
Sensei White. Wow.
In many ways, I feel like he saved my life.
Wow.
And I used to go all the time, and I just felt like I finally also found a place that I thought of as a refuge. So this like dingy, smelly, swampy place felt like a refuge. It's almost like that the smell and the grossness was all on the table, where like in my home or at school, like it felt like everything was trying to like almost pretending that it wasn't like that.
Right. So like it was bare, it was raw, it was real.
Totally. Never really thought of that until right now. Yeah.
I just love how you explained. That's how I got about like, most of the time we're trying to present in like all the darkness and all the dirt and the great, like you said, we're pushing down or pushing away or wanting out of sight. But this place you respect it because everything was out in the open. And so you felt that connection because you wanted to experience realness. and even in yourself wanting to find that connection. How do you feel that, were you able to open up? When did it become a point where you're able to open up and share some of the things that happened to you?
That was a little bit longer process, like I felt like in many ways, it was many years of just like trying to like hold it, because I felt like I needed to learn, I'm saying a lot of this in retrospect, but I think I just like really, I was trying to get through. And it's almost like I had to, in Zen practice, we call it a jiriki, like developing an energy inside of yourself that I felt like I had to, like that felt like a life force that actually carried me through. And it really wasn't until I was able to leave home, leave my physical home, which is when I began to do lots of very rigorous Zen practice and therapy. And, to this, wow. I went to this really intense therapist for, I don't know, several years. And I would go 3 times a week for 3 hours at a time.
Wow. So was it like EMDR? That sounds like something that
it was something that I don't see anymore. It was called Davenlu. I don't know, who knows what that is. But basically what would happen is that he wouldn't let me turn away. So anytime you turned away, he'd be like, "What's that? What are you avoiding?" And it was the first time I had actually been with someone where I actually realized that I was terrified to be in relationship. And that being in relationship was so painful. And to just stay there and just stay with a steady, ungilded gaze. And he taught me how to work with and actually how much rage that I had and how much fear I had, and actually learning how to like really get into that gunk.
Yes.
And actually like, it's almost like taking barnacles off a boat. It's like, it was like really hard work, and 9 hours a week, of this not turning away. You really, over time, get into some serious business,
That's so good. I know everyone listening. I mean, sometimes I run from my stuff, but now I'm just like, the sooner you face it, the better. So when you start going in and you start digging in, how was that process? Like, kind of, I know it's definitely not easy for me, but can you share with people who are like, you know what, it's time for me to dig, just what to expect?
Yeah, what to expect is you're going to be so uncomfortable. You want to run, like everything in your body and mind is saying, run. Because you don't like it. It doesn't feel good. And almost, I had, of course, all of those feelings, and it was like this amazing, crazy, painful birthing process, and it was like really learning, because birth is not a party, I've never given birth, but I've experienced people giving birth, and it's intense and painful. And it felt like that, and that you have to stay with it. You have to keep breathing with it. And I felt like actually I was learning about courage. So it's almost like Sensei White taught me about, coming into stillness, to be with my pain and my body, learning how to really be in my body. And this amazing person who really felt also like another kind of teacher taught me how to actually be still in my mind. And while I was doing that, I was also still practicing Zen practice. And I felt that it was like such a powerful combination of, really deep and rigorous work. And so I think you're asking my expectations. So again, I always like to re-emphasize, expect discomfort, expect pain, and expect that you're not going to like it. And to me, if you feel like you can really trust that person enough, because everyone's a little weird, but including me,
that part.
We're all a little weird,
Just a little bit.
But if they're good enough, and you feel like that they're really with you, and I felt like I could feel his love, even though he never said he loved me, but I could feel it by his steadiness and his attention. So it was actually like a learning how to trust what people are doing more than what they say.
That's deep. I think I feel like we need to sit with that for a minute, because I think it's so often that we want to hear, I love you, I care for you. But I think what you said, the feeling it and the action of it is actually more nurturing to us.
Big time.
How often did you feel that? Or when was this the first time that you felt nurtured in your life when you were with this teacher?
No, there were many people along the way, I don't know many, but there were several people along the way. And, I had a really cool art teacher and who actually was very attentive and caring. And, I had this amazing English teacher who actually was not my English teacher. She was just this, I was so drawn to her. And I was in social studies or something. And I loved this woman. And so I used to get a hall pass and sit outside of her room and just listen to her. Mrs. Spillane was her name. And I would just listen to how she talked about, she was also really interested in poetry, and she would have people put their heads down and just say, listen to the rain. Listen to the air conditioning.
Yes.
She was teaching people how to pay attention. And, also there were other people too, but it was always these people who took a moment to actually see you. And I remember this, I don't even know who he was, but some guy, when I was at some school, sent me a picture with a note. And that was a picture of me on a swing. And I was like, as a little kid. And he just said, I wish for you to find a place where you can be and express that joy all the time. And I don't even remember this person's name or who he was, but I felt seen. And somehow he saw me.
That is beautiful. I love that India Ari song that says, you know the truth by the way it feels. And just from both of those instances, it's like we feel spirit, God, the divine through other people. And even if you don't remember their name or their shell or even the way they look, you remember how they made you feel. And I think that is the oneness. I think that is spirit. And I don't know your beliefs as a Zen teacher, but how do you kind of connect with people listening on that feeling, especially when you've been through so much trauma and so much pain? I know for me, it took a while to align with the divine. And for you, how can you explain how you know when you're in alignment and when you're potentially not, or are you always in alignment?
Great question.
I know that was a deep question.
It's a wonderful question. It's, maybe the most important question. How do you know when you're in the flow of the world, And for me, these days, I do tend to feel that way a lot of the time, not all the time. But, for me, it's very connected to my breath these days.
Mm-hmm.
And I find literally having a soft belly is the key.
Mm-hmm.
And, I find that sometimes for like 2 years when I was, I don't know, about 20 years ago, I walked around with my hands on my belly.
Mm-hmm.
And I was trying to just making sure that while I was talking, that I was actually coming from a place of softness deep in myself.
Mm. But isn't that the practice? Is that part of your practice to have your hands there? Or no, you just did it on your own?
Well, we kind of have your hands near there. But I was literally holding it, and I found it was such a great training of bringing the energy down.
Mm-hmm.
And it really, for me, it's almost impossible to be reactive or lose it when you're really just right there, even when things feel excruciating, or that moments of heartbreak, and you can really feel the excruciating feeling or the heartbreak, and just be and just, feel the wrench of life. And to me, that's also what allows you to feel the amazing quality of life.
Ashe. Wow. I think just that alone, I think, can help give people purpose who have been through a lot of the darkness. And I kind of want to go back to your experience and you talking about the experience of your ancestors going through that trauma. Do you feel still some of that trauma with you today? And how do you cope with, people looking at you as other and looking at you as less than? Do you still experience that? Do you still experience any trauma there, or how do you cope with it?
Absolutely. Actually, I feel like there were always peeling away, the more we stay open. I had my great uncle was in a concentration camp, and he lived with us for several years. And every day he would retell these horrific stories. He was really stuck in the stories. And they were the most horrific stories. And I could tell you the whole story, and it takes about 3 hours, and so that's in me, right? But he also would talk about, because I would say, how did you stay there? I felt like I wanted to learn. And he said, well, I would just notice what was beautiful in the midst of it. And he said, outside of our barrack in Auschwitz, you'd see a little blade of grass poking up from the mud in the spring. And I would say, or I would notice how the birds were flying, or how the leaves were changing, in the fall. And so that kind of paying attention, it stays with you, and, just recently, I was just writing about this, and for quite a lot I have a new book coming out next year, and I had this memory that I had completely forgotten. And my mother had this idea to homestead, and she was kind of a hippie person, and let's go live off the land and live simply. And so we moved to this little town where they had never experienced Jews before. And then many horrific things happened there, where it was actually the first time like I really felt like a Jew, you know, where they would circle our house at night and shoot at the house and paint Jew. And a teacher held me up by my hair in the classroom and said, "Where are your horns, Jew?" And then I went to the principal and crying, and he said, "Well, where are your horns, Jew?" It was like that kind of town.
Oh, oh.
It was like a Children of the Corn, like there was like nowhere to go. But during that time, you know, I'd also love going out into the woods because I felt like that was a special place. So I would go and lay on these huge rocks with moss on them and actually feel good. It's almost like where I was learning how to regulate,
Right.
you know, and look up at the night sky and the silhouette of the trees it was one of my favorite things to do. And, you know, just recently though, I just remembered this time where I was kind of further into the woods than normal. And these four-wheelers came and they started hunting me. And they were screaming, "We're going to hunt you, Jew. And they were shooting at me. And it was so painful. I was literally biking here in Manhattan, but like on the West Side Highway, there's this beautiful park and it was getting night. And suddenly, you know, that beautiful moment actually that I normally enjoy where the sky like goes deep, deep blue, and then it gets black.
Mm-hmm.
And that happened. And something about being in the woods, and I just remembered that memory, and I fell off the bike. Like I just felt, I collapsed actually. And what I remember, like, because I had jumped into these blackberry brambles that were in the woods and got all cut up. Blackberries are delicious to eat, but
Those thorns.
yeah. And I was completely like shredded by the blackberries, and the guys that I think kept going. They couldn't find me. But so, yeah. And that was like a couple of months ago. So this memory, and so the work continues.
Mm-hmm.
And so what's different now is I was able to get up off the ground and say, "Oh, baby, wow, they are not here."
Right.
And I'm here in New York.
Right.
And
And even like you said before, that gratitude for still being alive, even when you got out of the blackberries, for still having your life.
yes. So I understand. No, it makes me feel so much tenderness towards life, actually, and what a gift it is. When you know, when there were so many times where actually I thought I'd lose my life, that you, in my experiences, that it has brought deep appreciation, you know, and surprising gratitude. And yeah, and also learning. So when those memories come, or those traumatic, you know, memories come, like, you know, glad I was wearing a bike helmet, you know.
Thank goodness.
You know, but to realize that we're never done. So another thing that has been always very important to me, you know, my teacher, she's 92, this amazing, incredible Zen teacher and wise human being. And, you know, she always says that, you know, we're never done. There's no arrival. So like, yeah, I've done a lot of work, and I continue to be in my own therapy, and which I really enjoy and appreciate. And so we're never done. So I feel like that we can keep peeling away and keep getting into this tenderness. Because to me, anytime we don't address what we're afraid of, at least in my experience, solidifies and kind of mortifies in ourselves.
Absolutely.
And I have that experience. So in many ways, I feel like I'm doing that also for my ancestors, that many of them were not able to do that.
Right.
And for my family, like not everyone has that capacity. And yet, for whatever reason, I do. And so how do I also heal as a generosity to even the people that actually have harmed me?
Yes. Yeah. Ashe. And healing, when it comes to healing, I know you mentioned meditation and sitting with it and being willing to acknowledge the pain, acknowledge the fear. What are some other things that you do yourself personally and in your center to help process the pain so that you can heal?
Yeah, so there's a key group of things. One is like great food. Like really thinking about some like food that's actually nourishing. I feel like that's super important, and to move our bodies and take care of our bodies. And I know these are things that you really appreciate too, and part of how we connect. And also, who are your 5 people who will really drop everything and be there for you and not have to try to make it okay, but just be able to show up?
Right.
So to me, having really good spiritual friends, I call them spiritual friends, who are like really there for the spirit of things, and having really good amount of time with them and nurturing those relationships. And to me, in Zen, in Buddhism, we call it Sangha, which is community. It's so important, like many times a week, we sit together in silence. And to me, it's almost like literally we have your back,
Right.
We're going to learn how to sit with the joy, or we say, the 10,000 joys and the 10,000 sorrows. Like we're going to do it together. We're going to and so for me, and also then we do a lot of relational work here at the center. So all of our training is really looking at what's going on inside and how are you relating to yourself and how are you living in a story, and can you shift the story? And can you try on a new story?
Wow.
And really looking at then also interrelationships. So like, how do those stories impact each other? And actually we do a lot of very relational training around, wow, when you do that, this is how I'm impacted. So really looking at impact, and then once we do all of that work, then we can go out and be, as we call it, awake at the bedside. So then you can actually show up for people. But if we're not doing our work, it's really hard, because then we go out and kind of want to be a savior for other people because we want to be saved.
Right.
And so how do we like slow it down, it down, so we can actually be of service, which includes us being a service to like this, like the scared part of us and the angry part of us and all of it, like welcoming it all.
Welcoming it all. I love that. In Oprah's book, What Happened to You, I loved it because it's basically just what you're saying about realizing when that anger, when that fear, when these visions, those things come, it just lets you know something happened. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. You're just seeing the tip of something that's really deep. And I just love those tips, because I feel like so many people feel stuck, especially when, like you said, you have visions, and I appreciate you acknowledging that, but you have visions that was told to you through a story, through your ancestors, that still affects you to this day. And then you have this experience that still affects you, but still seeing life from a space of gratitude, and then choosing to be of service to other people. I think that is just, it's just phenomenal, because I feel like a lot of people feel like if they're still experiencing trauma, or if they're still experiencing these visions or harm or pain, that they can't be of service. Unless I'm perfect, unless I'm well, then who am I to help another? What do you have to say to that? Because I know you have firm beliefs on that.
I don't know what anyone else is supposed to do.
Right, because we are
like, that's their business, but like, but you know, but I would say, you know, if we're wondering about it, we're probably ready to do something even a little bit differently. And so, like, to me, you know, a friend of mine talks about, like, how do you imagine yourself well? How do we activate our own imaginations? Like, what do you imagine? Like, many of us are just in this, you know, people who love that expression, like pigs in shit, you know, like we're often like comfortable, like rolling around in our own shit. I don't know if we can say that on the podcast.
It was said.
Okay.
I'm good.
But I think because it smells bad and we're used to it and we're just like hanging out in it. And I think that that's very easy. And I feel like the opportunity, at least for myself, is say like, okay, we already know that.
Right.
What else can I know? You know, how do I move out? You know, the Buddha, you know, today is actually a very auspicious day. Where on, you know, December 8th is when we're recording this. And it's the day that we celebrate the Buddha's awakening under the Bodhi tree. And so one of the things I've always loved is that, you know, and the Buddha was just some guy who lived about 2,600 years ago as a human being. And when he woke up, this awakening, he said, he put his hand to the earth and he said, the earth is my witness. And he said, "O house builder, thou art seen at last. The ridgepole is shattered. Never more will you build a house of sorrow." So what he understood, what he woke up to, was that he was the house builder of sorrow.
Right.
And that something about the stillness and something about the dedication to something different, a vow, living by vow. We often talk about that a lot in our tradition. Like, how are you living by vow? And rooting it deeply and widening out. So like this, how do you do that? How do you get clear about what your vow is? Like, what do you pledge? And how do you really root it really good, really well, and widen out so that then suddenly, wow, Koya, you matter and everything matters.
Yeah, everything matters. Oh, so powerful. Thank you so much. I could talk to you all day. But before I wrap up, I want to kind of ask you some of your favorite things. So what is the favorite book that you've read in the last couple of years?
Well, I was just in Tulum and and I read this really amazing book called Insomniac City, which, you know, I was like, that's an odd title, but
Wow.
by this guy, Bill Hayes. And he wrote this memoir, really, of himself having trouble sleeping, and he's an insomniac, and waking up and finding his partner dead is the very beginning of the book, because he took these sleeping pills to just try to sleep, and his partner had a heart attack next to him. Oh. And it's this journey that he goes on, moves to New York, and it's about him meeting all these people in the street, these artists and homeless people, and all these, and seeing the beauty and exquisiteness of people's lives. And he ends up falling in love again, and it goes on like that, but it's just written so beautifully. And to me, it was just another reminder in many ways of our conversation of what you can do with heartache and trauma is actually open your eyes a little bit wider.
Right.
And appreciate life. So Insomniac City by Bill Hayes, it is a gorgeous book.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm excited to try that out. And since you just went to Tulum, what was your favorite thing that you did in Tulum? I know you relaxed a lot. Was there a favorite thing?
But one of the amazing things that I love to do there is actually float in the sea, because it's really beautiful. It's the Caribbean, and just looking at in the place where we are, there's a lot of pelicans for whatever reason. And so you're floating there, and there's the sky, and you see these amazing pelicans coming and just like zooming around, and just being in the total vastness of the world and realizing that we're never alone.
That sounds absolutely amazing. Thank you. Thank you. And where can everyone find you and pick up a copy of your book?
So you can get my book at all the places that books are sold, and Amazon or Barnes & Noble or independent bookstores. And I'm on Instagram, and mostly just Instagram. And the Zen Center is at zencare.org. And everyone is completely
What is your handle on Instagram?
Koshin Paley Ellison.
All right. Awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on the Get Loved Up podcast. It's been such a pleasure to have you. Is there any one last thing you want to share?
When are we going to hang out?
Hey, when it divinely aligns. And I'm looking forward to it. Let me know when you're back in LA.
Totally.
Awesome. And thank you all so much for listening, for tuning in every single week for a new episode. If you have not already subscribed, please subscribe and leave a review. Let us know what you think. Let us know your biggest takeaways from this conversation. Tag me, tag Koshin if you're on social, and we want to see it. We want to hear it. And our biggest goal collectively is impact. We want to make sure that no one out there feels alone in what they're experiencing, and whether it be, stress or anxiety or trauma or anything, there's someone else who is going through something similar. So hopefully you all will, give us the feedback. Let us know also what you want to hear. We love to kind of wrap these podcasts also around the biggest demand. I like to ask questions around what you all are experiencing. So let me know. And until next time, love yourself, love others, and love the world. One day at a time, one breath at a time. Peace and love.
I just want to take a moment to say thank you for being part of the Get Loved Up community. I like to share topics and people making a positive impact in the world, and your feedback means the world to me. If you haven't already left a review, please leave a 5-star review and let me know what you want to hear more of on the show. I'm here for you, and together we're making the world a better place, one day at a time, one show at a time. Thank you for listening.